almost everything you dealt with as a writer is dealt with in one way or another resurrection. About somebody coming back from a kind of a spiritual death or a kind of a low point in his life. And you even started with that in the first movie that you wrote to direct, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And you bring that to Iron Man as well. And I wonder where that comes from for you.
Well, there's a spiritual resurrection waiting to happen in all of us, and I think that we find ourselves in a movie theater wanting someone to speak to that part of us. We want to be moved. We don't want a no-brainer. We want to have a profound experience at the movies. And even when you see something like Superman, I think we want to feel in someone else's resurrection or catharsis the potential for our own. In the same way that when we see horror movies and we see people die in horrible ways, it's a rehearsal for the death we know awaits each of us. And Stephen King calls it touching the shape under the sheet, because you know the face under that sheet is actually one day yours. So you want to touch it a bunch of times to try to rehearse for that moment when it's going to be yours. Actors are at their best, I think, when they're playful. And a lot of the job of a director in that environment is simply to encourage these actors to play and to forget about, the other distractions. And I take care of those distractions so that when it comes to them, they're just there in the moment and they get to do what they do. And so you want to find actors who have the capacity to play and respond to each other so that as they play off each other, like I'm looking at this guy with a beard, and now he laughed, so I'm a little embarrassed that I picked him out, and he's embarrassed and he's laughing. There's an interaction going on here now. I like the guy with the beard. He's a likable guy. I may get together with him later.
Well, let's leave these kids alone for a while, shall we?
That's no kid. If you put characters in the appropriate amount of danger, take them to the low point where we're afraid for them the way we would be afraid for us and say, yep, that's exactly what would happen. It confirms my worst fear. And then you get them out of it. And they do escape anyway. You say, well, now that's a catharsis. You took me to a real place that I believed was desperately unescapable and showed me a way out. I feel like I've had a spiritual resurrection from that. There was a tremendous sense when you looked in Robert Downey's eyes that there were no blinders, no aggrandizement, no buffers between you and the man's soul. It really felt like this was pain stripped raw, and you could just see it in his eyes. And that's so powerful. The idea that in all these movies, even the most heroic leading men, leading ladies, there's that moment where they just look and say something very honest like, I'm afraid. I'm so scared. And you read it on them, and that was what attracted me to Downey. Ultimately, I think it's important to try to find the vulnerability within the character, the weakness, not the strength. What is the thing they cover up? If they're acting brash or they're swaggering, why are they doing that? What's underneath that they're afraid of? And in fact, that's what Robert Towne said about screenwriting, was the first thing he addresses when he takes on a main character in one of his screenplays. What's that character afraid of? What's their worst fear? What's their trauma? What's the character they project, and what's the real version that's cowering like the little kid inside them? Robert Downey has the swagger, and he's got the scared kid. And for me, that was just gold. It's really, when you say, how do you direct these dialogue scenes so that the characters come off different than the formula? It's really just playing the subtext. So you don't necessarily have to reflect in the dialogue the fact that these guys care about each other. You don't have to look at each other and say, I need you, man. You just know they do. And I think that's what you try for, is to come at it dialogue-wise from the side, not from the front. And the movies in which everything is stated baldly, where people literally say, I've come to talk to you, I need you, I need to talk, I love you. I love you too, but I can't be with you right now. But what's wrong, honey? I don't know. That kind of dialogue is useful at times, but if you just have that on-the-nose attitude throughout your screenplay, then it becomes boring to read.
Let's thank Shane Black for being here.